Is there anybody in here who wasn't in the room for my keynote? Okay. No, it's perfectly all right. It's perfectly all right. It's just, I thought there might be more people, so I did another one of these. So,
I do know who you are.
Okay. Wow, look at this. Holy cow, all this stuff I did. It's phenomenal. Yeah. Okay. All right. So, let's get to this one. No spoilers. When you're making a game, the first step is, can anybody tell me what the first step in making a game is? Deciding what game you're going to make, okay? But that's not the end of it. I would argue that that's not even close. Of at least equal importance, and maybe more, is you need to know not just what you're doing, but also why you're doing it. And you need to know when you've hit your target. You need to know how you're going to know that you've succeeded, okay? There are a lot of ways that people try to get at this. Is there anybody who hasn't seen this? Oh my God, okay. This is probably the most common thing before, that you can have any two of cost, time, and quality, but you can't have all three. So knowing where you stand on this is one way of measuring success. Some people will go with a target metaphor. You know, what goals are at the center of the target, and then what are the secondary goals that are a little bit further away, and then what goals are a little bit further out. Useful, but not very deep. Disney, this is what Disney does. I'm afraid it's cut off at the end there. It also looks really, does that look blurry to you guys? Okay, well, anyway, okay, sorry. They used a pyramid. So what's at the base of the pyramid is what's really most important. And then secondary goals, tertiary goals, and then what would it be? The fourth level of goals. So that was what we actually used for Disney Epic Mickey, okay? So if we reinvigorated Mickey Mouse and Oswald the Rabbit, that's one success criterion. If we made a game that combined RPGs, adventures, and platformers, that would be another success criterion. So we were able to identify our success criteria and prioritize them. A bunch of people just do a list, you know. Whichever format you choose, you're identifying your success criteria, which is what I'm going to talk more about here, is critical. So here are some of my criteria, right? This is what I use when I start thinking about a game. Am I empowering players to tell their stories? Am I sharing authorship, just like I talked about in my keynote today? I said this at the keynote too, I didn't intend to, but is there one thing in the game that no one's ever seen or done before? That's a really important success criterion for me. Is this game likely to have an influence on other developers and publishers? I don't usually go around talking about this because it's really arrogant, but one of the reasons I wanted to make Deus Ex was because I wanted to shame other developers so they could never make the same kinds of games they were making ever again. I failed miserably. But influence is a big criterion. There are others. Other people value revenue and profitability. Those earlier ones are really personal to me, which I'll come back to later as well. Some value revenue, profitability. Frankly, if you're working with any kind of funding partner, if you're not self-funding, that's probably going to be the most important thing to them. And it's necessary for your business too. Whether you're an indie or whether you're part of a larger studio, making money can be important. Development costs, probably the second most important thing to your funding and publishing partners. But how much are you actually spending to make the game? Do you come in on budget? That can be a success criterion. Sales. Big publishers value numbers. They like those big numbers, and if you don't hit them, you don't get bonuses and stuff. A lot of people value schedule performance. That's probably the third most important thing to publishers and funding partners. Did you hit your date? Credibility, that's a weird one. But when I started working with Disney, they had really no reputation in the game business, in the AAA game business at all. So they wanted credibility. Earlier on, I had done a deal with a company called Majesco, which had done exclusively handheld games. And they were trying to establish themselves as a creator of AAA games. So they needed credibility. So credibility can be a success criterion. Are you delivering that to your partners? Team morale. You know, do people quit at the end of every project? You know, that's important to your studio. And then critical acclaim, review scores, Metacritic rankings. Holy cow, how many of you have signed a publishing deal that didn't have bonuses built in based on your Metacritic score? Okay, if you ever sign a deal with a big publisher, it's going to have a clause in there that has bonuses tied to your Metacritic score. I will go on record on tape saying Metacritic is bullshit and you shouldn't pay any attention to it at all. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And as I said in my keynote, I will never work again. And then, you know, fun. Fun can be a criterion. I would expunge this word from your vocabulary because it is completely meaningless. Okay? Everybody has a different definition. I defy you to define it in any way that is useful to you as a game developer, or as a player, or as a human. Okay? We can argue about that later if you want. Fun, useless word. But it will crop up. Whatever your success criteria are, whether they're my personal ones, whether they're the ones that matter to your publishing and funding partners, whatever they are, identify them, communicate them to everybody you need to, everybody who will listen, agree on them with all of the constituents before you start concepting. Forget about before you start building your game, before you start concepting, let alone coding, okay? Make sure everybody's on the same page about what's going to define success. Now, bear one thing in mind. You can never achieve all of the success criteria I just described, okay? Not all of them matter to you in all likelihood. You can't achieve them all, and trying to achieve them all will force compromises that will ensure you meet none of them, okay? So, be sure you know which ones are mutually exclusive. You know, some of you, think about that triangle, you know, success, time, and cost. You're not going to make all of them. You know, you might not achieve the Metacritic quality rating while hitting a schedule. I certainly can't do both. In fact, I can't hit a schedule or a budget to save my life. But anyway, that's a whole other story. I'll tell you, actually, it's funny, because when I was working for Disney, I got to see the script. Let me back up. I talked to some of the people who were working on the John Carter movie. Any of you see that? Okay, and I am a John Carter fan from way back, from when I was a kid. I loved those books. And I begged Disney to let me make the game based on the John Carter movie. And they wouldn't let me because they said, we know you can't make a budget or a schedule. And that game has to ship day and date with the movie, so we're not going to let you. And in retrospect, I look at that as dodging a bullet. Yeah, anyway, I can't hit a budget and schedule. Don't get defocused by trying to do too much or by trying to please all of your constituents in all ways, okay? You have to identify what's important, prioritize, okay? That target metaphor works pretty well. The pyramid that Disney uses works pretty well. What's most important? What's next most important? What's next most important? If you haven't thought through your idea at that level, you're not ready to start working. Okay? So if you can't meet all of them, what's most important? You have no idea how much this slide pains me. Okay? But the fact is, someone is giving you money to do something. It's their money, not yours. And so you have an obligation to meet their success criteria. Or find another client. Or go indie, where you're the client, okay? But your client's success criteria probably come first. Your personal success criteria. You have to live up to your own idea of what constitutes success. I often put that above my client's success criteria, but this is a do as I say, not as I do moment, because I've been very lucky. I don't know how I've managed to do it. But I'm going to talk about personal success criteria again in a while. And then finally, you have an obligation to deliver on your team's success criteria, okay? If you've hired the right people and you've explained your concept and your success criteria adequately to your team, it's probably not going to be a problem, okay? You're all going to be on the same page. If not, you may want to think about changing the makeup of your team. And I will tell you another little anecdote. At my studio, Junction Point, we started out wanting to be the studio that works with folks in Hollywood to create things that work in movies and games. It was sort of transmedia before there was transmedia. And we were working on an epic fantasy role-playing game, and Deus Ex with the serial numbers filed off, and a modern-day ninja game. And then Disney came along and said, do you want to make a Mickey Mouse game? And so I had to come back to the studio and say, guess what? We're not making M-rated epic games. We're going to make a Mickey Mouse game. And all of a sudden, my success criteria were no longer in alignment with my team's success criteria. And so I had what I called the come to Mickey meeting, where I said, if you don't want to do this, leave now. Go away and let's stay friends. And I lost one of the two best writers I've ever worked with in the game business, and I lost my best level builder. And it was the best thing that could have happened to the project, okay? Because they didn't want to be making a Mickey game. So if you've hired and communicated correctly, you should be fine, but you may have to change the makeup of your team. So that's number 3 on the criterion list. Okay, but remember, there's one more obligation. A lot of people disagree with me about this, but your real job is to focus on the project, okay? Your true leadership obligation is to your project. The end result is the only thing that matters at some level. No matter what else happens, no matter what your client wants, no matter what your team wants, you have to at least try to do something great. You know, you may fall short, but if you don't try to do something great, you are guaranteed not to achieve greatness, okay? A lot of people disagree. One of the things at the Denius-Sams Gaming Academy, we have a stringent interview process. And one of the questions I ask, it's kind of a trick question because there's no right or wrong answer, but I ask people to stack rank people, project, and process. And a lot of people say people, project, and process. That's the most common answer. Mine is a scummy project, people, and process, okay? At the end of the day, if you don't do something great, why have you bothered spending 3 years of your life working on something? So anyway, okay, so for me, project trumps everything. So that's the high level set of success goals. What are your success criteria at the high level? Once you start working on an actual project, how do you determine project goals? Okay, if you're going to lead people effectively, you have to have a place to lead them. If you're going to work effectively, you have to know where you're going. And for me, that means 2 things. For every project, I create what I call pillars and commandments. Okay, without those, I think success, however you define it, pretty unlikely, okay? So early on, establish the things that identify what your game is really about. I already talked about this at the keynote, so I'm not going to go into it again. But the things I talked about, the questions that the game was really about, those are the pillars, okay? Those are the first things you need to know. What is your game really about? Okay? Then come your commandments. These are the aspects of your concept that help individual contributors. Does everybody know what an individual contributor is, an IC? It's an artist, a designer, programmer. It's kind of a Microsoft-y term, but it's a useful one. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's useful that comes out of Microsoft. This is just one I happen to like. But they need to know what you expect of them every single day if they're going to succeed and if your project is going to succeed. So these were the Deus Ex commandments. I came up with the first 10, and Harvey Smith, the lead designer, added the next 4. I don't really expect you to read all of these, but I'm going to go through them. What the hell? Always show the goal. I thought and still think that it is no fun trying to figure out what to do. What's fun is figuring out how to do what you know you need to do. Okay, so always show the goal. Problems, not puzzles. At my studios, you're not allowed to say the word puzzle. Don't say it, I'll get mad at you. Puzzle implies that there is a single solution. A designer has created a puzzle, and you have to read that designer's mind to figure out how to solve it. A problem is something that can be approached in a variety of different ways. Okay? That's my definition, and it's the definition that everybody who works for me has to abide by. So in Deus Ex, everything was going to be a problem, which means everything was going to be solvable in a variety of ways. No forced failure. It is no fun to be walking through a world and have somebody sneak up behind you and knock you on the back with a sap and have you go unconscious, and you wake up strapped to a table. Anybody who thinks that's fun thinks it's more important to tell their story than for players to be empowered and sharing authorship and all that stuff. So no forced failure. Players do, NPCs watch. If there's something interesting, let your players do it. If there is something boring, let your NPCs do it. I'm not saying you have to agree with any of these, but this is what we used on Deus Ex. You have to pat your player on the back. You have to do it regularly. Tell them, hey, good job, okay? All games do that. The problem is that most games say, you just killed 10 people. Good job, That seems a little simplistic to me. But you have to pat your player on the back. Tell them when they're doing good, okay? Your difficulty ramp. It's job one of a designer, right? Make sure that you're ramping your difficulty. As the player gets better, the game has to get harder as well. Okay. In Deus Ex, we were building a world that was 3D. If you can map a 3D level on graph paper, you have screwed up. Okay. 3D levels should have people looking up and looking down and looking all around. A 3D level, you got to think in 3D, both horizontally and vertically. Okay, if you're making a 3D game. Each map must be highly interconnected. We didn't want straight corridors. We wanted things that looped back around, that had a variety of ways to get places. We had to make maps that were highly interconnected, okay, to give players options, a variety of ways to get wherever they needed to go. All problems will have multiple solutions. If anybody ever came to me with, here's how if you said, here's how the player does X, or here's where the player does Y, I would go back and say, nope, think about it more. You have not thought this through. That is not the game we're making. Locations will be, boy, now that I look at these, a lot of these are repetitive. But anyway, regardless, locations reachable in a variety of ways. Okay, so you get the idea, all right? And these rules existed for that project. We had a similar set of rules for Epic Mickey. Every game I do has a set of rules, okay? Ooh, I went the wrong way, sorry. And here's why these are important. Because if you make them as specific as this, that means that everybody on the team knows what to do every day. They can decide for themselves if what they're doing is contributing to the success of the project. Your commandments have to be specific enough that they drive every decision everybody on your team makes every single day. And so when you, as a game director or producer or whatever you call the primary creative driving force on the project, when work is reviewed, everybody on your team needs to know that those are the rules you're going to apply. okay? And here's a fun exercise. I said there was a fun exercise in my keynote. There's a fun exercise here. If you're a gamer or a critic or a developer, try to figure out what the pillars and commandments were of the games you're playing. What were the rules, not the mechanics, not the mechanical rules, but what were the rules that drove the development of that game, okay? It's an interesting, fun thing to do. And the interesting thing is, having those rules and those pillars define what I call the creative box, okay? That as long as everybody's working within the creative box, they can do whatever they want, okay? So success as an individual contributor is, I'm working within the creative box, which means I am helping this project achieve its success goals. And as a leader on a project, your only job, if you're doing it right, is if someone gets out of the creative box and starts creating a puzzle, for example, you just go, nah, get back in there, get back in there. But as long as they're in there, you don't care if a pixel is blue or green or purple, you know? You don't care about any, you don't care if someone curses or doesn't curse, you don't care about any of that stuff. You establish that creative box, and your team will be creative within known constraints, okay? Okay, so why do you need project success goals? Well, okay, you've got to understand that you're in alignment with your partners. I already said that. You're in alignment with your team. You need to know that your team is there with you. They have to understand and buy into your creative goals and your non-creative goals. If your number one goal is hit your schedule, they need to know that, okay? And happy, committed people do better work, so anyway. If you're out of alignment, what are your options? Well, you have three choices. Find other partners. Easy to say, hard to do, okay? But if you're out of alignment, that may be something you have to do. You may have to bend to the will of your partners. That happens a lot. Luckily, it hasn't happened to me, but that's because I'm an opinionated ass who doesn't mind saying no and getting fired. But you may have to bend to their will. Or, finally, convince them you're right. I wish you luck. Okay, and by the way, just as an aside, you'd be surprised how often your partners have no idea what they actually want. And figuring that out is really, really hard. So really work with them, collaborate with your partners until, say stupid things. Like, let's give Mickey a big knife, you know? Or let's do a zombie version of Donald with a nail through his head, you know? And help them figure out what they really want, okay? Because it can be really hard. Okay, so what if you're out of alignment with your team? Well, you know, producers might prioritize schedule and cost. Programmer might prioritize fast, reusable code. An artist's going to put graphics first. Designer might prioritize elegant game systems or fantastic levels. Different team members have different priorities. But what you have to do is make sure everybody understands that the primary motivation for everybody on your team is the success of the project, okay? Their primary motivation has to be in service of those pillars and those commandments. That is the route to success. Okay, and what that means is, how many of you guys are producers? By producer, I mean managers and schedule monkeys. Okay, you might have to sacrifice some schedule. You might have to slip some stuff, okay? And game directors, how many of you are like the creative, the guy with one more vote than everybody else on the project? Okay, you might have to sacrifice some features. By the way, that's how I describe myself. I haven't done real work in like 20 years. I'm the guy on my teams who has one more vote than everybody else combined. It's like if there are 800 people on the project, I have 801 votes. But sometimes I have to sacrifice features. I wanted an interactive music system on Epic Mickey. I had to give that up. So anyway, there are a bunch of things. So yeah, you might have to sacrifice some features. And individual contributors might have to sacrifice some quality, you know? Deus Ex, you don't even want to know how hacked together the code was in Deus Ex. You just don't want to know, okay? You might have to sacrifice the reusability of code. An artist might have to scrap work that's already been done. And artists, by the way, you are going to have to scrap work that has already been done. Just live with it, okay? Designers might have to give up whole levels. I had to give up, what was it, three different mission sets on Deus Ex, okay? So you might have to sacrifice some quality. All right, so what sorts of things can you measure if you're measuring success? Well, there are events. A measurable development event would be a milestone completion date, a number of levels built, a bug count, preferably one that is going down. Bugs found versus bugs fixed, very important measure for me. You can measure data, focus test subjects, report enjoying the game. After the fact, review scores if you care. By the way, my advice is never read reviews, never read interviews, never look at video, just do what you do. There are development numbers. That one new feature that no one's ever seen is working. That's a measurable event. You had to hire 20 artists by a certain date. That's a measurable event. There are business numbers. What is the pre-order level? After the fact, what are sales, downloads, whatever? What revenue and profits have you generated? So when thinking about success, think about measuring specific things, okay? So what does it take to achieve goals? Well, does everyone on the team and at partners understand and buy into the goals? You need right understanding. You need the right resources. You need people with the right skill set, the right mindset, and the right culture fit, okay? If you've got someone who wants to make bloody first-person shooters, don't have them working on a Mickey Mouse game. You need to make sure you have the right design. Does your design, do your mechanics, do your levels all support all of those pillars and commandments, or do you have things that are all over the map? Is the design right to achieve the goals? And is the project planning sufficient for all of the guys I just described as schedule monkeys? I apologize. Is the project planning sufficient to ensure the success by any measure? And are you gathering the right data to measure your success? Okay. So what do you do if you're off target? What then? Okay, get the right people in the right positions. Move people around, get new ones. You can modify the design or the scope of the project to make success more likely. Happens all the time. You can modify the project plan. Oh no, Scrum isn't working. Not that that ever happens. Scrum isn't working. Let's go waterfall, or Kanban, or Spiral, or some other development methodology, none of which work. So try a different team structure. Maybe it's time to crunch a little bit, God forbid. Finally, you can modify the success criteria. I do not recommend that because it's really dangerous. The further you are into the project, the changing your success criteria is a dangerous thing to do, but you might have to. Okay, so how do you define success criteria to know if you're off target? Okay, how do you know when you're off target? Okay, ask questions. Okay, ask questions. But ask specific questions, okay? What are some specific questions you can ask? How will your staff know they've done a great job? Can you answer that for your project? I assume most of you, how many of you are developers in here? Can you all answer with clarity? Does everybody who works with you know when they've done a great job? If not, you probably haven't thought through your success goals well enough. How will your partners know you've done a great job? If you don't know the answer to that question, you're probably not talking to your partners, your publisher or your funding partners enough. Talk to them more. How will players know you've done a great job? What do you expect them to say? So how will you, they're definitional questions, sorry. How are you going to know when you're finished? Because God knows I could start a game and keep going forever, you know? On Deus Ex, I kept asking for more time and more time and more time. And I got it, actually. It was pretty weird. On Epic Mickey, I asked for more time, and I got a little bit. On Epic Mickey, The Power of Two, I didn't get any time. We'll just leave it at that. So how are you going to know when you're finished? And these are, I'm serious about this. Ask yourself these questions. Okay, this is not, I'm not being conceptual here. Literally, ask yourself these questions and make sure you and everybody on your team and everybody you're partnering with can answer them. What do our partners expect of us? What has to happen for us to stay in business? Who do I need to hire to make this game happen? Have we made the right design decisions to accomplish all the other goals? Okay? So ask yourself specific definitional questions and make sure you can answer every one of them. So why is any of this important? I've already kind of hit on some of this, but if you have success goals, they can provide a basis for critical decision making every single day you're working on this project. If you know scheduling isn't the most important, Freudian slip. If you know scheduling is the most important thing, you're probably not going to innovate much. If state-of-the-art graphics are the goal, you don't want to build a team that's all programmers, okay? Project success goals are important because they will help you make decisions every day you're working on your project. Knowing your success criteria and knowing your partners are on the same page will increase the odds that you will get paid. If you're working for a major publisher in the AAA space, this is critically important. And if you're doing a startup, you know how quickly you go from, we're going to change the world, to, oh my God, how do I make payroll next month? You know? You need to get paid. Success goals are important because, as I said earlier, they're a way to empower team members to operate as effectively and as efficiently as possible, okay? Just as kind of an aside, you want to push decision-making as low as possible in your organization. If I have one more vote than everybody else, okay, but I'm not making every decision on the game. I evaluate every decision that gets made. But you want to push decisions as low as possible. And everybody understanding what your success criteria are is one of the best ways of ensuring that your team is empowered. Okay. Now, oh, and you can make sure the right work is being done. Sorry, I forgot about that one. Okay, so that's kind of project goals. But what about personal goals? I want to change direction a little bit. There are two different kinds of success goals. There are project goals, we kind of talked about those, and then there are personal goals. How many of you have thought through your personal goals, your career goals, where you want to be in 10 years or 20 years? Wow, you are way ahead of where I expected you to be. That's great, okay? A lot of people don't think about things like, what is it that gets me out of bed in the morning? You know? What's the thing I won't compromise on? What was I put on earth to do? I was a weird kid. I decided that a long time ago. But for me, you're probably tired of hearing them. My personal goals are to make games that empower players to tell their own stories. I have no interest in doing anything else, period. I will never make a game that doesn't do that. I want to advance the state of the art in some ways. Again, I'm not saying I succeed at any of these, but I keep trying. Seriously, I said this in answer to a question after the keynote, which many of you had probably already left, but we're still a young enough medium that we're not a solved problem. And we can't just repeat the successes of the past and expect to do anything but, you know, deteriorate and float away like, dandelion seeds or something. Okay, I tried. That was terrible. But I think it's important to at least try to advance the state of the art in some ways, even if you're making a Barbie game. For me, games can't be just about what's happening on the surface, okay? There has to be some subtext to the games that I work on. And I said this at the keynote too, my only obligation is to sell one more copy of a game than necessary to get someone to fund my next one, okay? And if it's the person I'm working for on this project, it'd be nice if it was the same person on the next project, but I don't really care. Someone has to fund my next game, okay? So how do I measure my success at achieving those goals? And you could probably apply some of this thinking yourself. Listen to players, okay? I can sort of look at my games and say, yeah, I succeeded, but you need success measurements outside of yourself. So listen to and watch people play. Follow message boards. Listen to your players. I gave some examples of this at the keynote, but there were some magic moments for me on Deus Ex where I knew we had succeeded at accomplishing everything in those pillars and all those commandments. I was looking at people talking on a message board, and there was one guy said, wasn't it cool when you got to the prison and interacted with that prisoner? And someone responded, what prison? Oh yeah. There was another time I was watching our lead test, a year after we shipped the game, let me clarify this. A year after we shipped Deus Ex, I was watching our lead tester demonstrate the game for some IDOS executives. IDOS published the game. Now why IDOS executives needed a demonstration of a game they had shipped a year earlier that had won 35 Game of the Year awards, I don't know, but they did. And I was watching this guy, this tester, demonstrate the game, and he was in a place I had played through myself 100 times, and I had watched probably 1,000 people play through it. I knew exactly what problem, not puzzle, but what problem he was trying to solve. And I watched him setting things up, like move an explosive barrel here, gas grenade over a light attack munition over there. I watched him setting this stuff up, and I knew what problem he was trying to solve. There were 3 problems all in this one little space. And I was looking at it going, is that going to solve those problems? Is that going to work? And I mean, I had helped create the game, and I had no idea. And so what the guy did was he set all these little pieces up, and he stepped back, and he got out a pistol, which is the weakest weapon in the game. He took one shot, and he solved 3 problems with one shot. I guarantee you no other person on the planet had ever done that before, okay? So listen to people talk about your game, watch people play, okay? And for me, seeing people solve problems the way they want to, that was success right there, okay? Listen to developers. This is where I get really obnoxious, okay? But I had people come to me after Underworld shipped and say, I started my game company because of Underworld. A little bit of influence there. I will never name names, but I had one developer tell me that we would never have made game X if not for Deus Ex. I had another developer come up to me and say, when we played Deus Ex, we completely changed the design of the game we were working on. Okay? So that's success. Can you get another deal? I've always gotten another deal. So know your success criteria, okay? Get a start at knowing who you are. You don't have to, your personal success criteria, your personal goals, your ideas about what games you need to make or you will die trying don't have to be the same as mine, okay? But figure out who you are and what's important to you. And I guarantee that you will do better work and you will be more professionally fulfilled, okay? It might take you years to figure this out. A lot of you raised your hand and said you've already figured it out. I think you're all liars, okay? But think through how you're going to measure your success against your personal goals, okay? So why are they important? Why are personal goals important? They can help you figure out where you want to work. Try to work places that are in alignment with your personal goals. It would be crazy for me, by the way, there is no judgment implied in what I'm about to say, though it will sound like there is. There's no way I would go work at Zynga. I mean, there's just no way, because my goals and their goals are not aligned, okay? So having a set of clearly articulated personal goals, both for the short term and the long term, can provide guidance about where you want to work. So you can try to work there. It can provide guidance in partnering strategies, okay? I'm not going to partner with Zynga. You know, System Shock 3 and Zynga, it sounds like a match made in heaven, doesn't it? You know? Find partners who buy into the same things you do. So knowing what is important to you personally can help you find the right partner. It can provide guidance in project selection and planning at the exploration stage that I talked about in my keynote, okay? You won't waste time concepting out ideas or listening to concepts from other people that don't meet your personal success criteria. And it will provide guidance in hiring and staffing. Hire people who buy into your mission, okay? There's no point in me hiring someone who's got 10 years, well, nobody has 10 years of experience at Zynga. There's no point in me hiring someone who's had 6 months at Zynga, okay? I already said, you're not likely to turn a shooter freak into a Mickey Mouse fan, okay? Okay, so I'm about done, but let me recap what I've said. Okay, document your success criteria early. Know what your studio's all about, know what your project is all about, know what's important to you personally. I said this in my keynote, I'll say it again. I'm not trying to send traffic to my blog, I'm really not, but early in when I started blogging, go look at what was then the Junction Point mission statement. It embodies everything or encompasses everything that I think is important, that I needed everybody at the studio to buy into. And if I would send potential hires there and say, look at this, if you don't buy into it, let's not even bother doing an interview, okay? Make sure all constituents understand. Make sure your team understands what you're after. Make sure your partners understand what you're after. Communicate with them. Here's a little pro tip. Have them repeat back to you what you just said to them. See if they can give you your mission. In fact, before you even tell them, ask them what their mission is. You know, what are you trying to accomplish as a publisher or as an employee? And if you find someone who sort of tells you what you want to hear, that's awesome, okay? And then hold everyone. Make sure all of your constituents agree, okay? And if you disagree, then like I said, find other partners or other team members, give in, you know, do what you have to do. And then hold everyone to the criteria in everything you do. Those pillars and those commandments were sacrosanct. There was no compromising on them. And for me, there is no compromising on my personal mission as well. Find the things that you will not compromise on, no matter what, okay? Okay, so if people forget, go back to your pillars and go back to your commandments. Have them written down. Post them all over your studio. So you can just go, see? That's why this doesn't work. Yes, that would be a great idea in some other game or some other studio, not here. So, and always remember, Yogi Berra, what a brilliant thinker, the deepest of deep thinkers. If you don't know where you're going, you'll end up someplace else. So do everything you can to end up where you want and not someplace else. Any questions? Well, that was half-hearted. Don't even bother. Too late. No. I know real applause. Okay, any questions? Yeah.
Did the pillars and commandments ever change for Deus Ex or any of your games that you've worked on?
No.
Not once.
I have added to them as my understanding of the games grew, but I have never changed them. I've never deleted one, let's put it that way.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
On the pillars that you have, did you come up with them yourself? Did you have a party team with your collaborators? Like if you're in a larger team, I understand the lead person would do all that. But if you have a small team, is that something that should be more about group discussions, for example?
Well, we're back to the opinionated ass problem. I know what I need to succeed, okay? And what I need to succeed is a strong tech person, a strong art person, a strong systems and mechanics designer, and someone who lives for project management because I can do that, but I really don't want to. And typically I come in with a starting point. Like, I can't talk too much about it, but on System Shock 3, there are already 3 things that I am just not going to compromise on. If you don't want to do that, you're not part of that inner circle, and we're not going to work together. But I need those 4 other people to help me expand on them the way Harvey expanded on the commandments for Deus Ex, and clarify them and strengthen them. So it is a somewhat collaborative effort, but it's usually limited to that core, okay? Because, I mean, game development, unless you're working on a team of 3, it can't be a democracy. On a team of 3, you can probably, no, but, well, I get that, and you probably can work it out together, you know? But even on a team of 3, I would strongly recommend that somebody have 1 more vote than everybody else. Or you're going to be arguing a lot. Without going into detail, that happened at Ion Storm. There was nobody who had 1 more vote, and you saw how that turned out. Yeah.
Other than obviously just make a decision, back to your very first thing about deciding what game you're going to make. Do you have any tips that you kind of picked up as your concept thinking about stuff, or land on the right thing?
How much time do we have? Well, I could literally pull up another lecture about creative starting points right now. Probably not the best idea. I think the one way is to go into it knowing those pillars. What are the things I want to explore? Like the 3 things. I mean, on System Shock right now, well, let me back up a step. I answered a question about this at the keynote, so if you've all heard this, I apologize. But I have a set of questions I ask myself. I call it the 6 + 2 + 1. And I don't know why I do that, it's just silly. But I should just call it, 9. I ask myself those questions. And I can publish this, it's not secret or anything, but I ask myself those questions about every wacky idea I have gets run through those questions. And if I can't come up with a good answer for any of them, any one of them, that idea just goes into storage somewhere because maybe someday it'll be useful. And then I have a 1-page, it usually ends up being between 2 and 15 pages long, but I have a 1-page concept pitch document, a template that I have to fill out when I come up with an idea because it helps me solidify what's going on in my head. And at Junction Point, for example, I had people pitching me concepts on the team all the time, and I made them answer all those questions and fill out that template because if they couldn't do that, then I knew they didn't understand their idea well enough to keep going with it. So without going into detail about my process, have a process. What is important to you about a game? What do you need to know before you start working on it? Just have that process in place. And like I said, it's not private. Maybe I'll go on my blog at some point and put that up there, and the template and the questions and everything. Yeah.
In the next year, I'm probably going to be getting into my senior studio class, and planning. My goal is to be the game director position within that class. What advice could you tell someone who will be working with a team that doesn't exactly have they're not going to get a salary, obviously, because we're working in class, but someone or a group where morale is more important than money, motivation. What advice could you give to that kind of group? I can't kick someone out if they're not willing to work with the team.
Yeah, you should sign up for the Denius-Sams Gaming Academy. We talk a lot about that. There are a couple of things you can do. First of all, wow, how much time do I spend on this one too? Really make an effort to understand each person's communication style. Some people like to be communicated with face-to-face, others prefer email, others prefer Slack. Okay, understand everybody's communication style. Some people are sarcastic, some people are opinionated asses. So understand communication style, figure that out. Understand conflict resolution style, which is similar but different. Are people avoiders? Do they avoid conflict? Are they obnoxious, in your face people, aggressive conflict resolvers? Figure out their conflict resolution strategies. And by the way, you can Google all this stuff. Conflict resolution, you'll find all sorts of great stuff, okay? In fact, at DSGA, we run people through a variety of personality tests that reveal communication style and conflict resolution style. And it's very enlightening for people. Our first year, we did it too late, and we discovered we had 17 out of 20 people were avoiders. That made for an interesting team. But do all that. In terms of motivation, yeah, you don't have money. And at the DSGA, you can't really fire someone. But it's not really true, actually. If someone is being disruptive or not being a productive part of the team or doesn't buy into the pillars and commandments, which you will create. Okay. I was looking for some confirmation there. If you have someone who isn't contributing, take them aside, have a one-on-one discussion with them saying, what is it about this game that you don't understand? Or what is it about my management style that is not working for you? Or is there a way I can communicate with you better? Okay? And you can send them home. You can't fire them. I mean, I have no idea what your constraints are, but at the DSGA, we tell our leads, it's a complicated story. We rotate leads pairs, producer and director, out every 3 to 4 weeks. And we tell each pair, if someone is causing you trouble, send them home. Say, you can come in for lectures, but because you're being disruptive, do not come into lab to work on this game for the next day. Get your head in order. Or just don't come in for the next 2 weeks. Find out if you have that authority, but that can be a powerful motivator. Appeal to pride. Everybody has pride. We're working on this. We're all in this together. Don't let your team down. You're not letting me down. You're letting your team down, okay, if you're not doing the job. And then remind them that when they go off looking for a job, they're going to need a portfolio. And if they work together effectively and work hard and do great work, they're going to have a great portfolio piece, Come up with real I'm sorry, this is kind of off topic, sorry. But come up with real goals, not made up goals, okay? Establish your interim milestones, for sure. Have milestones, have specific, clearly defined milestones, okay? But have one of them be, we're going to enter the IGF competition. At the DSGA, we've been invited every year to participate in Intel's University Games Showcase. That's a real motivator. Your game is going to be shown at GDC in front of hundreds of people. That's a motivator. That gets people working effectively together, So if you can have some external goals, that'll help too. There's a whole bunch more, but that's a start anyway. Yeah.
You mentioned the 4 things you really need to make building a game studio, a VR game studio at IBM from scratch, and it's a big company, so it takes a long time to do things, so it's going to happen piecemeal.
Oh, God.
What's the order in which you want those things?
Well, wait, which things are you talking about?
You said like basically programming guy, artist, project manager,
Oh.
mechanics guy.
All at once.
All of them guy.
Yeah. No, I need all of those guys because I don't do real work. Yeah.
Say you're working with volunteers and you can offer try to get people on that team.
Didn't I just answer that? Wait a minute.
Only like, yes, like, there's also not like a crazy incentive or anything like that. Besides like saying, hey, portfolio piece, people still lose interest despite.
It kind of depends on what know the personal goals of the people you're working with too. Okay. In addition to communication style, conflict resolution style, knowing what people's goals are can provide you or may provide you with tools, motivational tools. How can you help them achieve their goals? And if there is no way you can help them achieve their goals, maybe they shouldn't be part of your team. If they're not helping you achieve your goals and you're not helping them achieve their goals, why are you working together? Ooh, I need a programmer is not good. And I know I'll tell you, I shouldn't probably say this, but at Junction Point, Disney wanted us to grow so quickly that we were doubling in size every 6 months. I mean, it was crazy. And there were 6-month periods where we would add 60 people. And what that means is you're just hiring bodies, culture. Who cares? We need someone to type. And that's terrible. Even on a team of 3, don't allow that to happen. Be aligned. Like I said, be aligned. Anything else? Okay, we're done.